So this is how I ended up killing Lilith, the first endgame boss in Diablo 4, with a Bone Spear Necromancer. Diablo 4 was tempting to try out, but as a Blizzard veteran, I learned to be careful with their latest releases. So I took a few weeks before jumping into this game. Knowing that Blizzard games always have extremely solid foundations, my concerns were more about whether they will pay attention to their community and fix issues in time. Surprisingly, Diablo 4 developers have been listening to their player feedback carefully and made a few hotfixes to improve quality of life and address game issues. So I thought, okay, let's give it a try. Choosing my class was a blind pick and I went with the Necromancer, which turned out to be a great choice as the Bone Spear build is extremely strong for early to late game. After finishing the story and going through the renown grind, you have already accomplished a lot in the current version of Diablo 4. You can choose to wait for Season 1 to experience the dopamine kick and blast past the story with a fun seasonal mechanic. However, if you're truly immersed in the Diablo 4 universe and enjoy the gameplay of your chosen class, you have the option to grind for High Nightmare dungeon keys or take on Lilith at level 100. Personally, my endgame goal during the preseason was to defeat Lilith.
Is life even worth living? And all that I see is gray. Should I keep on breathing? Or fall in a deep dark space? They say things get better. Just hold your time and wait. But it feels like I'm waiting forever. I'm ready to end this pain. Close my eyes and fade away. Fade away. Is it all in my head? I don't remember when somebody said that I was only here for a reason. That's to suffer. That's to suffer. I'ma tell it like it is. People using me for years. Now they're telling me their fears. I shouldn't be trusted. I'm looking in the mirror, I'm disgusted. All the voices in my head saying fuck this, fuck this.
So, do I deserve my kill of Lilith? Yes and no. My class was unethical and allowed me to skip most of the boss mechanics, making the fight way easier. I only had to dodge one mechanic throughout the entire encounter. Of course, building your character properly and learning the fight are still important to face Lilith at the right time and avoid bugs. But Bone Spear with its off-screen damage potential and the Blood Mist ability granting 3 seconds of immunity makes Necromancer one of the best, if not the best class for boss killing in Diablo 4. Since I started playing the game a month late, I didn't have to theorycraft. Luckily, Ben _, a renowned Path of Exile player, was streaming his Bone Spear Necro playthrough. So I followed his Paragon tree for leveling and later adjusted it for my Lilith kill. Bone Spear is extremely strong, but it's also fun, and I wouldn't have played it until level 100 if it wasn't enjoyable. Alright, let's talk about my Lilith build. As you can see, I used only 5 abilities since I didn't see the value of using a 6th ability specifically for Lilith. Bone Spear was my main damage ability, enhanced by Corpse Explosion, Corpse Tendril, and Bone Splinters for critical and damage buffs. And Blood Mist served as a survival ability, granting 3 seconds of damage immunity. Bone Spear is all about critting as hard as possible while managing your essence properly to benefit from the insane buffs provided by your skill tree. One of the main reasons the Bone Spear is so strong is that even for single target damage, you don't have to pick the supernatural Bone Spear evolution to apply vulnerability to the target. Instead, you can pick paranormal Bone Spear to increase critical strike chance and the chance to get 2 extra bone shards on its way back, leading to insane shotgun potential. Currently, the bone splintering offensive aspect is bugged, making the first target damaged by Bone Spear vulnerable, rather than all enemies beyond the first target. While playing Bone Spear, it's crucial to keep your essence level above 50, as you want to benefit from the 25% chance to fire 2 additional Bone Splitter projectiles. Additionally, each subsequent time an enemy is hit by the same cast of Bone Splinters, you gain 1 extra essence, greatly enhancing your essence sustain. The Bone Necromancer's K passive gives a multiplier of 1% increased damage for each point of essence you have above 50 upon casting a Bone skill, and note that this key passive is enhanced by the offensive aspect of Serration, which gives an additional 1% increased critical strike damage for each point of essence you have above 50 upon casting a Bone skill. Finally, the last skill tree node that requires proper essence management is Serration, which provides your bone skills with extra critical chance for each 10 essence you have upon cast. To further enhance your Bone Spear damage, we utilize Corpse Explosion on Corpse Tendril skills. Corpse Explosion grants even more essence sustain and multiplies our damage by 9% for 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. And Corpse Tendril is extremely important as its offensive aspect, Grasping Veins, grants increased critical chance for 6 seconds on Corpse Tendril cast, as well as critical strike damage if we damage our target with it. Ideally, the burst combo to perform is using a Bone Splinter until you get its critical chance buff, followed by Corpse Tendril into Corpse Explosion. From there, spam Bone Spear until you get close to 50 essence, and then start building up your essence gauge again. And as a last ability, Blood Mist grants immunity to mechanics. I maxed it to rank 5 to reduce its cooldown and pick the Ghastly Blood Mist evolution, which generates corpses. This allows us to utilize the aspect of Explosive Mist, which reduces the cooldown of Blood Mist for each surrounding corpse it detonates. Note that I also picked the Memento Mori node, sacrificing our Skirmishers for increased critical chance, Shadow Mages for increased maximum essence, and our Iron Golem for increased critical strike damage. Gear-wise, the important offensive stats are Vulnerable Damage, Critical Chance, Intelligence, and Maximum Essence. As for utility, I recommend Lucky Chance, Resource Generation, Essence Cost Reduction, and Chance to restore primary resource. Movement speed on both boots and necklace is also essential, as the Necromancer class doesn't have any movement abilities. And for defensive stats, focus on total armor, any kind of damage reduction, and maximum life. When it comes to gems, I recommend using maximum life for your armor, increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies for your weapon, and armor gems for your jewelry. The Deathless Visage Unique Helmet is a go-to if you want to play Bone Spear. It provides critical damage, maximum essence, and an aspect that further enhances your Bone Spear damage. You want to get the Explosive Mist aspect on your chest piece. Gloves play a massive role in this build, as you'll be able to grant +4 levels to your Bone Spear, enhance your critical strike chance and damage, and benefit from primary resource sustain and lucky hits, imprinting the Grasping Veins aspect on them. For the pants, I used the aspect of Disobedience for increased tankiness. On boots, I prioritized movement speed and essence cost reduction, imprinting the White Striker aspect for even more movement speed. On necklace, prioritize movement speed and essence cost reduction, and ideally try to get +3 ranks of the Evulsion passive to further increase critical damage to your Bone Spear, imprinting the aspect of Serration. When it comes to rings, focus on vulnerable damage, critical strike chance or damage, maximum essence, lucky hit chance, or resource regeneration. You have to imprint the mandatory improved flesh aspect for insane resource sustain, as well as the Edge Master aspect for even more damage. Lastly, on your weapon, aim for vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, intelligence, core skill damage, or damage to distant enemies, and imprint the mandatory splintering aspect on it to apply vulnerability to targets. Okay, regarding the Paragon tree. As I mentioned earlier, I followed Ben_tree and tweaked it for my Lilith kill. If you want to check it out, I linked it in the description below. He started by socketing the corporeal glyph on the initial board, granting extra armor. Next, he proceeded to the Bone Graft board, adding the exploit glyph for increased vulnerable damage. Continuing along the right path, he acquired the Scent of Death board, socketing the Sacrificial Glyph, providing additional damage against injured enemies and extra armor. Continuing on the right path, he reached the Flesh Eater board, enabling your burst potential. This board offers a 40% increase in overall damage for 6 seconds after consuming 5 corpses. Additionally, he socketed the Essence Glyph for extra critical strike damage and damage against enemies that are not healthy. Note that in Diablo 4, healthy enemies have more than 80% life, while injured enemies have less than 35% life. Lastly, for the final board, he returned to the Bone Graft board and progressed upwards to access the Blood Begets Blood board. This board allowed us to socket the Imbiber Glyphs, providing massive damage while our character is healthy. Finally, I recommend the Heady Precision Elixir for increased critical strike chance and critical strike damage, or the Elixir of Resourcefulness for plus 50 maximum resource.